Okay, so the first question I want to ask you is this. Why this story again 5 years later? Why is it newsworthy? Does anybody care anymore?
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, you have someone who is responsible, or some people who are responsible, depending on which theory you follow, for the deaths of 10 sets of remains that were found along Ocean Parkway. There have been no arrests. And so that definitely makes it an interesting case, because obviously the killer or killers are still out there. And also, what are police doing to try to catch them? And also, it makes it important and newsworthy, particularly to the victims' families, because they want to know what's going on as well. These are lives that were taken. These are people who existed and no longer are here, and their remains were dumped basically along Ocean Parkway 5 years ago.
Now, what were some of the challenges? I mean, you did a series of articles so far of getting an angle that would actually engage readers. What is something new you're going to tell Newsday readers about this case?
Yeah, for a while there, it was kind of tough, because for about 3 years, the Suffolk County Police Department was not really issuing any statements on the case. Once the new administration took over in 2012, they had a template going where, they weren't going to say anything about the case unless it added to it or helped the case move forward. And that was basically what, we had to deal with. We were basically cut out of any information. So, you think about the story and you think, well, the victims' families are the ones that are wanting to know what's going on. So you touch base with them and see what's going on. And, in one case we had the, although her case is not tied, or police have not tied her case to these 10 bodies, Shannon Gilbert's case, was that sparked the discovery of all these remains. And so, one of the people that, you go to is Shannon Gilbert's mother, Maury Gilbert, because, you just want to find out, have you had any heads up from the police or anything like that? And next thing you know, she's talking about filing a lawsuit, a wrongful death lawsuit against a Peter Hackett, who she believes had something to do with her daughter's death. Now, you start moving that forward, and then you bring up the background, and you don't let it, for the lack of a better term, you don't let the story die. And then you have anniversaries. Anniversaries are always a great time to remind readers that, this case is still open. And there's somebody out there who's responsible for these bodies.
Now, what kind of research did you do? And who did you talk to this time? Who didn't want to talk to you?
Well, the research is basically, just touching base with the families. And then you get experts also as well to kind of talk to you about, what do you think are the stumbling blocks in this case? When police won't talk to you, you do have to turn to an expert who does know about these kinds of things. I had one expert say that, having a profiler and giving the information of a profiler out there is only going to help the killer or killers, because then they'll know what, police are looking for. And then you have another expert who talks about, these are unsolved cases, and kind of gives us a little bit of the psychology about the investigation from a police perspective, because he was a former policeman, a former detective. Says, you don't want to have 10 homicides open in Suffolk County. You want to close these up, and, you as a detective are working diligently to make sure that these cases are solved. These detectives, I'm sure would want to talk, but again, you have the top administration who says put a lid on it. You can't talk about this case right now. It's just not a good time to do it. So you have to go with an expert. But research really is mostly trying to touch base with the families. There have been a couple of families that have been hard to get in touch with, like Amber Costello's family, but she only had one sister, and the background of the people who have been identified, they were sex workers. Some of them were reported missing, and they're the only ones that have been identified. So you don't know yet who the other 5 are and what their stories are just yet. It's a hard case to report, but you do when police aren't talking to you, you do definitely find a way, and the best way is to reach out to the families of the victims who have already been identified. Now, police have spoken recently. There has been a change of administration at the Suffolk County Police Department. So we have a new Deputy Commissioner, Tim Sini, who is in line to become the commissioner come January 25th. And then you have also the new Chief of Department, Stuart Cameron, who, by the way, led the searches back in 2010 and 2011, so he knows this case inside and out. And then you have a new Chief of Detectives, Gerard Giganti, who is also going to be leading up the case as well. And so now this new administration is opened up, and we do have stories coming forward. They are updating us. They are reassuring the families that the case is ongoing, that they have not forgotten them. And that's really all that the families really want is for the police to acknowledge that, yeah, we're still looking into this case, and it's not cold.
Now, it's interesting that SCPD now is willing to talk, because everything I've read about the case has been that SCPD hasn't been saying much about anything regarding this case.
Right,
So,
well, that was the old administration.
Yeah,
They've got
right.
a new top brass now, so they've got different guidelines.
well, let me ask you this: you're covering the story. You've had to talk to SCPD in the past, in the original articles, and then in, of course, Lost Girls, the book by Kolker about the victims.
Kolker.
Yes. There was more than an intimation that SCPD dropped the ball on some of the investigative aspects of this case. Do you think that's one of the reasons that they've been less than forthcoming?
I can't put my finger on it, and really what I feel like is that at the very beginning, I was told, I sat down with Commissioner Dormer back in 2011.
And he was roundly criticized by the families.
Yes, he was criticized by the families, but he said that according to him, about 3 days after they realized, they've got a missing person in Suffolk County, that they went out and they did searches. I spoke to former Chief of Detectives Dominic Larone, who explained a discrepancy between the phone calls that were initially made by Gilbert. Apparently, according to him, he says that Gilbert had called 911 and had said something to the effect of, "I'm in Jones Beach." And because I guess she didn't know where she was, and there's different jurisdictions and there's different protocols that these law enforcement agencies have, she was transferred to the state police, who could not, did not know where she was. And he says that they went out there to Jones Beach. They didn't see anything, but it wasn't until they had gotten some kind of a phone record from her boyfriend that they realized that she had actually called within the Suffolk County jurisdiction. And actually, I digress. When Gus Coletti called, he's since passed away. Gus Coletti called police. That's when Suffolk County Police sent over someone from the Marine Bureau to check out the location. So, yeah, there were some things that were crossed wires, and then there was a missing persons report that had to be filed out of Jersey City because that's where she was from. She wasn't from Suffolk County, but, I can't really say too much about the investigation and what exactly it was that went wrong internally, but this is basically the information that I've been able to get from the investigators directly.
Now, what did you learn, Tania? What is one thing that you learned, knew that you learned as a result of covering the story again now?
Well, that I've learned that you definitely have to continue as a journalist, reviving the story and pushing forward, so that way at least officials will finally get to speak. I mean, you have them not talking to you, and obviously the public has the right to know what's going on with this case. because for all they know, it could be their neighbor, it could be somebody they know, and kind of tying those things together to make it more, more compelling, so that people could at least there's more of an interest in talk about the story as a journalist. That's what I'm speaking as, by the way.
Great. Do you have any plans in terms of further coverage of the story?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely want to find out, what does the FBI, what will be concluded, how the case with Marie Gilbert on behalf of Shannon Gilbert's estate, what happens with that case against Mr. Hackett. That's interesting. You want to also just keep moving forward and find out who did this and pin down. I know there's a little bit of conflicting theories about this case. You had the DA saying there was 2 to 3 people possibly involved because of the method of killing, and then you had Dormer saying it was 1. Just kind of pin it down and see, what is it? What is the theory? Do you believe that this is the work of 1, or do you believe that this is multiple killers? And is it really a coincidence that this place has become a dumping ground for people who didn't even know each other to just dump bodies? I mean, that's always interesting.
Tania, thanks a lot.